Hello and welcome back to the channel. In today's tutorial I'll be sharing a requested video on how to cut this deep neckline inbuilt corset. So if this is something you like, please don't forget to hit on the subscribe button, give this video a thumbs up. So let's dive right into today's video. So to start, I've gone ahead to mark the basic measurements, which includes the shoulder bust of the person I'm working with, which is 11.5. Shoulder to under bust that I'm working with is 16 inches, and shoulder to waistline that I'm working with is 19 inches. So after that, I marked 5 inches after my waistline, but I later added half. I'll use the total length of the pattern paper, which is 5.5. So I'll be adding 5.5 to my waist after my waistline, so making this corset a total of 24.5 inches for the top length. So next, I'll be marking the shoulder divided by 2. The shoulder I'm working with is 15 inches. Divided by 2 is 7.5, and I will mark. From that point, I'll come down by 1 inch, and I'm going to place and draw my shoulder slope first. So after that, I will go ahead to mark a basic neckline of 3 inches and 3.5 for the neckline. You can also go ahead and use 3 by 3 inches, and I'll go ahead to place my curve drill and draw out. After I'm done drawing this out, I'll just extend the neckline very well. So the next step is to get the chest line. And to get the chest line of this particular dress is the bust circumference divided by 6 plus 1.5 inches. So the bust is 41. After dividing that, I have 8.3 inches, and I'll just go ahead and mark. After I'm done marking, what I have on the shoulder, which is 7.5, I'll mark it, place my ruler, and I'll draw a straight line and connect. Now I'll divide what I have at the armhole into 2 by folding my tape, and I'll mark. From that point, I'll be coming in by ½ inch. Go ahead to mark my bust circumference divided by, the bust circumference I'm working with divided by 4. So 41 divided by 4, I have 10.25, and I'll go ahead to mark. Now I'll place my curve drill, connect from the bust circumference to the ½ inch and to the upper part of the shoulder. After I'm done doing that, I'll be marking my nipple to nipple. So I don't have the actual measurement for the nipple to nipple, so I'm going to be showing you 2 methods. The first method is to measure what you have on the chest line, which is 8.3 inches, and divide it by 2 and mark. Or you're going to do your bust circumference divided by 4. The bust circumference I'm working with is 4.41, divided by 4, I have 10.25. so that 10.25, if you take out 2 inches, you have 8.25, which is almost the same as your chest line. So dividing it by 2, you'll be having approximately 4.2. So I'll be using 4 inches on this pattern. Instead of using 4.2 or 4.1, I'll be using 4 inches. So I'll go ahead and mark that 4 inches, and I'll go ahead to draw a straight line at this point all the way to the lower part of my pattern. So I'll be marking the dart intake on both sides, and I'll be using 1.5 inches at both sides of my pattern. After I'm done marking that, I'll go ahead to use my ruler, and I'm going to connect, and I will be drawing a straight line at both sides of my pattern. After that, I'm just going to go ahead to connect or mark it out with my marker. Then after marking that, I'll be connecting from my bust down to my under bust. So next, I will be going up by 2 inches at the upper part. So this is if you don't want your cleavage to be revealing. If not, you're going to use 1.5 inches. So this totally depends on the person you're making the dress for. So I'll just use 2 inches here. You can use 1.5 inches also. Just like I said, it totally depends on what you're making or what the person you're making the dress wants. So I'll just go out by 1.5 inches for my dart intake also at the upper part, and I'll go ahead to connect. After connecting that, I'll go ahead and connect the other side of my pattern this way. And I'll also use my marker to reconnect my pattern so that it will be visible for you to see. So next, I will be inserting my body measurements. I'll go ahead and mark the bust circumference divided by 4 here, which is 10.25. Measure this 1.5 inches, replace, and I'll add my sewing allowance. So for this pattern, you're going to be using half inch or 1 inch for your sewing allowance, because this is an inbuilt corset. You don't need too much allowance, so half inch is actually the best. So the underbust measurement I'm working with is 34 divided by 4. I have 8.5. Now I'll measure this 3 inches that, and I'll replace it here and add half inch for the sewing allowance. So the waist measurement is 33.5, but I'm actually snatching or taking out 2 inches from it, so we have 31.5 inches there. So that 31.5 inches, I'm going to divide it by 4. So I'm just going to go ahead and measure these 3 inches that intake replace, and add my half inch. So this pattern is actually a transparent corset, so I would have loved to add multiple darts to snatch out the waistline, but to make this easier, I just went ahead to take out 2 inches directly from the waistline. So on the hip, you're going to mark the hip circumference divided by 4. Measure the dart intake and add your sewing allowance. The hip is actually 43 divided by 4, which is 10.75, and I'll just go ahead to reconnect all my pattern or all the dots that I have made. So this is what I have after I'm done connecting. So from this point, after I'm done connecting, I'll be coming down by 1.5 or 2 inches after my underbust. So to draw out the cup, I'll blend this in here and make sure that what I have there matches with the other side, and I'll start drawing out my cup. So I'm going to connect from that part all the way to the lower pattern of my dress. So after here, I'll just come down by 1 inch, and I'll just go ahead and reconnect it. So this is what I have, and I'll place my French curve or curve drew, and I'll connect my cup. And I'll also go ahead and work on the other side of the cup. So from here, I'll just draw out a straight line, and I will reconnect. I'll come up by half inch here because I don't want the armhole to be too revealing by the side. So you can divide what you have from the shoulder to the bust circumference divided by 2. But because I'm working with a bigger bust, from my bust circumference measurement, I'll come in with 1 inch. This is to accommodate the bust very well, so that you not have the side of your bust coming out at the side of the cup. And I'll just go ahead and reconnect it to the lower part and use my marker to outline that. So any excess you have at the yoke here after blending or sewing your cup, it will just extend slightly at the armhole. So after that, I'll just go ahead and we'll insert the bust dart. Your bust dart is the difference between your front shoulder to waist and your back shoulder to waist. The front shoulder to waist is 19 inches. The back shoulder to waist is 15.5. So 19 minus 15.5, you have 3.5. So I will mark 3.5, and I went ahead to slant it to the bust point. So here is the bust dart for my pattern at this side. So if you're not comfortable working with a bust dart, you can just go ahead and leave it and cut out a basic cupped corset. So I'm also going to explain how you're going to be working with this if you don't want to insert a bust dart, because mostly in an inbuilt corset, the back pattern is actually lower than the front because of the bust dart. So if you're not using a bust dart, I'll be also dropping an explanation on how you're going to work with that. So from the lower part, I'll mark 1.5 inches. So why am I using 1.5 inches? You notice on the skirt, the design at the waistline is a bit low. So you don't want your skirt to exceed and your inbuilt corset will be showing. So that's why I'm using 1.5 inches. And after that, I'll just go ahead and draw out and I will connect. So when you're cutting this also, you're going to be blending in your dart, and when you blend it, you notice that one part might not be matching and you're going to actually readjust it. So at this point, if you find this tutorial very interesting and educative, please don't forget to hit on the subscribe button, give this video a thumbs up, and also leave your question at the comment section. So while cutting it at the side, you notice I readjusted the cup to suit what I have, or the body of the pattern to suit what I have. So after cutting, this is what I have. And after this, we'll be working on the back pattern of this dress. So for the back pattern, I've gone ahead to mark out my basic measurement just like we did for the front. So the only difference that I have here is that my shoulder to waist at the back is 15.5, and my shoulder to waist at the front is 19.5. So after that, my waistline, I added extra 5.5 inches just like we did for the front, because after the front we added our 5.5 inches, which is our blouse length. So now I'll be marking my nipple to nipple divided by 2, the nipple to nipple I'm working with, sorry, divided by 2, and I'll go ahead to draw a straight line. So for the dart intake at the waistline, I'll be using 0.75 at both sides of my bust darts, and I'll also go ahead come down by 1 inch from the bust point. So for the lower part, I'll still mark that 0.75. So I want to use a straight dart here, because at the back of this dress you notice that there's no dart there. The dart was actually blended off before cutting that pattern as one piece. So another important fact to note is that we have an inner corset at the back. So it's a 2-in-1 back pattern. So I'll also be explaining how to achieve that. So after I'm done cutting this out, I'll go ahead and insert the body measurement. So for the neckline of the back, I use 3 by 1.5 inches. So here I'll mark the bust circumference divided by 4 and add ½ inch. So that is the exact measurement we use for the front pattern. At the waist, remember we took out 2 inches from the waistline and before dividing it. So do exactly the same mark and then measure the dart intake, replace and add ½ inch. Here you're going to mark your hip circumference divided by 4. So the hip circumference is 43 divided by 4, you have roughly 10.75, and you're going to mark. Add your dart intake and also add your sewing allowance of ½ inch. After that, you're just going to go ahead to cut this out, come up by that same 1.5 inches and reconnect. So for people that are not using a bust dart for your pattern, after that 1.5 inches, you're going to draw a straight line at the lower part instead of coming down this way. This is to shorten the back pattern, because in an inbuilt corset the back is actually lower. So here you'll be making loops for your button. So at the back is actually a loop that is there, and with a button. That is why we are having an inner lacing bar at the back of the dress. This is to help snatch your waist first before you can now attach your, you can now use your button to close up the back pattern. So also remember that the back pattern is shorter than the front. So now to cut out this back pattern, you're going to be blending your dart and you'll be cutting this out as one piece. So after cutting that, we'll now be cutting the inner lacing bar of the dress. So I'll just go ahead and I will cut this off. And after we are done cutting off, here you can blend in your dart, or you can just go ahead to cut this out as one. So you're going to use this pattern to cut the first back. After cutting, now you're going to come down by ½ inch from your chest line. This is to avoid having bulkiness at the armhole of the dress. And after that, I'll just draw a straight line. Now you're going to be going in by 2 inches, 1.5 or 3 inches, anything that will suit you. You're just going to go ahead to use that. And after that, you're going to be drawing a straight line to create your lacing bar area for the dress. So for the lower part, you're not going to use this exact measurement you have here. It might be too uncomfortable. The inner lacing bar is actually going to be shorter than your actual dress, so you can go up by ½ inch or 1.5 inches. So here I'm just going to go ahead to mark a straight line. and I'll go ahead to connect this. After that, I'll be cutting this out. After cutting this out, we'll be moving over to the skirt pattern. So for the skirt pattern, I've gone ahead to cut out or mark out my basic measurements here. So from my waist to the hip point is 7 inches. For a much taller person, please use 8 inches. So after this, here is my knee point, waist to knee point. So we'll be assuming this is the total length of the dress, because the skirt is actually meant to be longer, but we'll be assuming this is the total length. So the waist measurement you'll be using here is that one that we snatched. Remember, the waist measurement is 33.5 and we took out 2 inches. So what you'll be cutting is 31.5 inches divided by 4, and you add your sewing allowance. Here you mark the hip circumference divided by 4 and add your sewing allowance. After that, you'll be coming up by 2 inches after your knee point. This is to give you that fitted effect at the lower part. Measure whatever you have on your hip. You'll be taking out 2 inches from that measurement you have on your hip line, and at the knee point you'll be marking that 2 inches you came off by the knee point. You'll be marking that measurement minus 2. Let's say your hip is 40 divided by 4 is 10 plus 2, you have 12. So by the time you take out 2 inches from 12, you'll be 10 inches, and you're going to mark to the lower part. So for your skirt length, after measuring your actual skirt length, you can add extra 3 to 5 inches so that your skirt won't be jumping up at the lower part. So I'll just go ahead and I will connect my pattern. After connecting, I'll just go ahead and I will cut this out. So now for the back pattern, you're going to be adding 1.5 inches or 2 inches for your zipper allowance. So to do that, if you're using a pattern, you can just add this before cutting out, but if not, go ahead to just place on another fabric and cut out. So in front of your zipper, you'll be going in by 1/2 inch, and then you'll be replacing that 1/2 inch at the other side of your skirt pattern. This is to make sure that your zipper relaxes very well and it will not be popping up at the back. And you can also go down by 1/2 inch. So after you're done sewing this dress, you'll be putting on the skirt on top of your inbuilt corset blouse. To create the stylish waistline effect, you can go down by 2.53 inches from the actual waistline, and you're just going to go ahead to mark the design. So after that, the sleeve of the dress, you're just going to drape fabric around the sleeve, hand tack it or use your machine to stitch. After you're done stitching, you can now create your wrapper illusion at the waistline. So if you find this tutorial very interesting and educative, please don't forget to hit on the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up.